So why do Gen Zs avoid phone calls and follow-ups? I mean, obviously we've gone over that. There is a preference because they've grown up doing something a certain way, but it's instant. It's instant gratification. They like that. They want that instant gratification. You know, sometimes they ask for things and they don't really think about whether they should be getting it. A good friend of mine told me a story the other day about his daughter, who's a Z Gen, and she was working in a restaurant, and she went and asked for a raise, and she basically got that raise. She thought she valued that amount of money that she was asking for, and the boss gave her the raise. Now, whether she deserved the raise or not is irrelevant. The thing is, the boss gave it to her because she asked. And some bosses will say yes, some bosses will say no, but in this day and age with Z Gens, they'll just ask without even thinking sometimes. Whereas years ago, you'd be up all night thinking, will I ask or won't I ask? Now I'm just gonna ask, what have I got to lose? You know, so there's that sort of terminology of instant gratification. They find phone calls intrusive and prefer controlling the timing of interactions. That's a big area. So they find phone calls intrusive. So somebody's calling me, imagine that, it's intrusive. This is still now by far, statistically, historically, research-driven and community-driven, the most important tool in business. It's still seen as the most effective tool in business. Over email, over portals, it's still the most effective form because you get instant messaging, you get instant knowledge, and you can make a footprint straight away with this thing. So with a call. Scheduled call times, introducing designated times for phone calls to reduce anxiety. These are some of the ideas around how to do this, because there is an element of anxiety around the phone calls. So scheduling those times can reduce the anxiety. I'm not the sort of person that is worried about this, but I grew up in an era where you just picked up the phone and rang somebody and asked their business, right? And if the phone got slammed on you, you just keep going and keep going and keep going until somebody says yes. Then you work out, what are the things that I've done wrong and what are the things I've done right? And you only work that out by your failures. And then you only work that out by your successes. And you go, these are all the things I did over here. These are all the things I did over here. These things work. How can I make these things better? If you don't do that, you never learn. So it's very difficult to find that, and it is the most important tool on the planet. So communication workshops, where you host workshops focusing on the benefits of etiquette and phone communication. Being able to show a Gen Z how efficient it is to ring your boss up and say, I've got an issue, or to knock on their door and say, can I speak to you about something important? Rather than sending an email that you may not have even constructed. You might have done it on AI, right? And you might have gone into AI and said, look, this is my boss, this is where I've got to do things. And then the boss gets the message, you go in there and you're not really speaking and you're not conducive of what your values are on that ChatGPT email. So I'm not saying I'm against AI, I'm for AI. But what I'm saying is you need to have a mix, the human behavior and the technology. So sparking Gen Z's interest in classic communication, they love success stories. They love to share success stories. They love to hear success stories too. So it's not doom and it's not gloom with Z Gens, and it's not great and it's not gold with it. It's somewhere in the middle, but they like both sides, right? So they like to hear success stories. They like to give success stories. Integrating traditional communication methods with the Gen Zs with digital first. You can put digital in there and incorporate digital. So what do I mean by that? If you're doing online training, incorporate a video or an interactive video. If you're doing a face-to-face training with Z Gens, interact people with video, interact people with communication techniques that are technologically based, right? So being able to, rather than fill in a worksheet, maybe type it in and send it off later. It might help them, right, to get the communication to you, maybe. Role play exercises are number one. Getting them out of their comfort zone is something you cannot put a dollar value on, and they love it because they've never been challenged to get out of their comfort zone as much, right? Because they're Z Gens. They've been brought up in a generation where they've had a lot given to them, and they're lucky to do that. And they're privileged to do that, and they appreciate that. But to get out of their comfort zone sometimes it can be a little bit challenging. So when you do that and they've done it, it's a bit like this, getting the child to go into the water and the child doesn't want to go into the water. The child starts to cry, but you push the child bit by bit by bit by bit and get the child to go bit by bit, toe to knee, to ankle, to hamstring, to thighs, to hips, to stomach, to neck, to under the head. And then the child's achieved so much, whereas 20 years ago, we just jump off a pier, right? But you got to go bit by bit by bit. But it's strategic and you want to get the right traction, because there's a lot of high-end skills with Zen Gens that you can incorporate when you get the human behavior. The Gen Z may not immediately see the value in traditional methods, but when they get progress, they love it, because it's all about progress. So influencing Gen Z's the power of social icons. Influencers largely shape Gen Z's perspective. So, being that person that's got a lot of followers, being that person that's got people listening to them and they've got pull through, that's a big part of the Z Gens. We need to adopt that. We can't push it away. And just the one comment, from say a baby boomer or the next gen or someone else that comes out there and saying, oh, what do they know? It's just a young kid that's got a lot of followers, is enough to put the Z Gen off for years, right? So you need to be able to embrace that and show that, hey, we're different, but you're different too, right? It's a different generation. Influencers are influencers. Many years ago, you had movie stars. A movie star would come into town, everybody would want to meet the movie star. You meet the movie star, you tell everybody about it. You get a signature from the movie star. Now, the movie stars come in at the airport and people don't really recognize who they are. They're not as important anymore. But an influencer will come in and they've got an entourage around them. So influencers are important. So we need to understand this. And we need to understand that influencer marketing strategies should be included in training events. And they should be included in part of their training. We need to enhance engagement by influencer-led campaigns, right? These are all important, and whether you like it or not, it's irrelevant. You need to utilize it, because Z Gens know the future, because they are the future. Interactive sessions with influencers boost trust and engagement. But long-term collaborations with influencers like, in this example here, Charli D'Amelio, in what she's trying to do, she's offering authentic content that resonates with Gen Zs, right? She's boosting brands and trust and loyalty. So what she's doing in what she's actually doing herself is trying to get followers. But what she's also trying to do is show purpose. But what she's also trying to do is build brands. And that's where you build brand recognition. You look at different sporting events. They're all based around pay-per-views now. They're all based around influencers, followers. If you look at a leader in today's day, a manager, a leader of an organization, you base their success on one thing: how many followers they've got at work. So if you're a leader or you're a manager and you've got 20 people under your care and they're all following you, they've got your trust, they've got your back, then you're powerful. If they're just sitting there and they're just there for you, but they're not following you, they're not really in that with you, they haven't got your back, you're not very strong. So think of followers. When they've got lots of followers, they've got lots of people following them, they're very, very high in terms of leadership. So you've got to think about that in terms of followers. Good leaders have got lots of followers.